When I found out I was pregnant, my ex and his family weren't thrilled. They thought I had done it on purpose and that I was trying to both trap and ruin my ex's life. My ex's parents tried very hard to get me to have an, they even went so far as to try to bribe me to do it. When that didn't work, they made a lot of threats about taking my son away from me and how he would grow up never knowing who I was. In the end, I took the money and lied about having the A, just so they would leave me alone. When my son was a year old, my ex found out, and his parents tried to make good on their threat. What followed was the most emotionally and financially draining experience of my life. My ex eventually seemed to realize it wasn't in our son's interest to do what his parents planned and stopped trying to take our son away from me just when it looked like they were going to get what they wanted. Now I reluctantly co-parent with him, and even though I try to be nice to him for our son's sake, I've refused to have anything to do with his family. I accept my son will spend time with that side of the family, but I want no part of it. So I was shocked when they showed up on my doorstep and told me they had come to pick my son up because my ex was held up by a client meeting. I told them that he wouldn't be going with them and they could call my ex to come and pick him up when he was done. They asked me if they could come inside and see him since they hadn't seen him in so long and they were already here. I didn't even respond. I just slammed the door shut in their face. They kept knocking and I ignored it. I took my son in the garden as the doorbell isn't so loud outside and distracted him until they stopped. My ex called me over 10 times while they were still knocking, but I ignored it. He also sent me a text saying it was his time and he had given permission for them to collect him. My ex ended up coming to our house long after our son had gone to bed and he was furious. We had a huge argument where he said his parents were our son's family too, and I had to let the past go. I told him I would never let it go and that I didn't want his parents coming to my home ever again. My ex tried to say if I had forgiven him, I could forgive them too. I've tried to keep my feelings on the matter to myself because it won't help our co-parent. But I was so angry in the moment that I told him I hadn't forgiven him and I wish he would leave and never come back. Now he's acting weird around me and even our son mentioned his dad seems sad. Am I in a hole? OP is definitely not in the wrong here. I don't blame her for not forgiving the grandparents. They've treated OP horribly and I bet if they could they would try to remove OP's son from her. I'd get a lawyer for their custody agreement to create ironclad boundaries where OPX is the only one to come get their son. And now let's see if the community agrees with me. Police 420 says, not the a hole. OP, you need to protect yourself and get an official custody agreement. Grandparents' rights are a thing depending on which state you are in. Protect yourself and your child. They've already threatened. Now show them you mean business and talk to an attorney. Sandbrilliant 2675 says, not the a hole. Hire a lawyer. Make a record of any physical or electronic paper trail you have of the threats these people have made towards you about taking your son and get a restraining order against his parents. If your ex wants to be a part of your child's life, that's fine. But if they want you to just let it go, they cannot be trusted and should not be allowed time with the child unless supervised by you or better yet a professional supervisor. They are a threat. Good luck. Please 25 says, not the Yahoo. His parents see the child when he does. No mother should hand a small child over to someone they know doesn't have their child's best interest at heart. Story 2. So first, a little backstory. My brother, 23, has been living in our childhood home with his girlfriend for a few years. My parents moved out of the house years ago, and my brother and his girlfriend have been paying rent ever since, as the only two people in the house. There's no contract, it was just a family agreement. They agreed to let my brother and his girlfriend live in the house for 5 years. And at the time of this happening, it had only been 2. Throughout the years, my parents would force my brother and his girlfriend to pay to fix up different parts of the house as a part of living their situation, and would have the neighbors spy on them to report back on anything my parents wouldn't approve of. Last year around winter, my parents asked me to come over to discuss something. When I arrived, they told me that they were planning on kicking my brother out of the house the following spring and asked me to help them break the news to him when the time came. I followed up by asking them when they were planning on telling him, and they said they would tell him in spring, just before kicking him out. They asked me not to mention it to him. So at that point, I was faced with a dilemma. I could either ruin my relationship with my parents by telling him as soon as possible so that he would have time to prepare for the move, or I could wait to tell him and potentially ruin the relationship with my brother that I've been building over the last few years if he ever found out that I knew earlier than I said. I ended up doing what I felt was the right thing, which was going over to his house instantly and telling them both that my parents were planning on kicking them out. Of course, he and his girlfriend were devastated about it. And when my brother called our parents, they were livid. They called me over and told me I was the most selfish piece of crap who had ever lived, that I had ruined all of our relationship with each other because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I asked them both what about this could have possibly been deemed selfish and to give me an example as to how I could possibly benefit from this situation. They didn't have any answers, so I left and told them to have great lives. They ended up kicking my brother out 2 months earlier than planned. Since then, my brother has moved out of state and both of us have cut them out of our lives. So am I the a-hole here for going behind their back to tell my brother earlier than they wanted me to? I think OP parents are the ones being selfish. They violated OP brother's privacy by spying on them and violated their agreement by kicking them out 3 years early. On top of that, they didn't even give him a heads up so he could prepare to move out and just planned to tell him right before kicking him out. OP made the right choice by telling her brother about this, and parents are to blame for their relationship being ruined. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Purple Mars Alien says, not the Yahoo. What exactly did they think that not telling him until they kicked him out was going to result in? Probably the same thing, him and the girlfriend cutting them off. You at least gave them some warning so they could look for options before being kicked out. Intelligent Help says, not the a-hole. You did the right thing by going to your brother right away. Hope you two have had successful lives. I'm curious though, and not really any of my business, but what made your parents decide to break their agreement and kick your brother out? Lurking Toaster 66 says, not the a-hole. Did they seriously not think that they were ruining their relationship if they did it last minute? You were a good brother. Story 3. Mother-in-law hates me. She's tried to keep it to herself in recent years, but I can tell she hates me. We moved halfway across the country 2 years ago, and when someone asked her if she was sad at our going away party, she said no. She then realized how it sounded and tried to backtrack that she was happy for us. She gets what she wants now and can talk to her son on the phone without having to invite me to family events. My husband talked her into visiting, which I was not happy about. I wanted her to stay in a hotel because I'm a very private person and I felt uncomfortable having her in my house. Her husband, who I don't even know that well, bad-mouthed me to everyone and made a big deal about who asks family to stay in a hotel. Mother-in-law changed her mind and said she doesn't want to come if we don't want her, so I relented and said they could stay with us. It has been super awkward. She barely eats, she's on edge. I hate having her here, and my husband is sad because they used to be so close. Anyway, the other day my husband asked her to get the baby because we were both busy and the baby had woken up. Mother-in-law's husband followed her, which honestly made me a little uncomfortable, and then they weren't coming out, so I just flipped the monitor on. He was asking my mother-in-law how she was doing, and she was saying how much she hates me. She can't stand being in the house and wishes she went to a hotel. How she feels nauseous all the time from my cooking. The sound of my voice puts her on edge. And then the worst thing, she said she kind of just wants to give up and not have a relationship with her son anymore because it is so fake and awkward. My husband was furious and confronted her when she came down and demanded she apologize for saying she hated me. Mother-in-law demanded to know why we were spying on her. And I said I had the monitor on, and when she was in my child's bedroom, she should not expect privacy. She got pissed and started screaming at me for listening to her conversation. My husband again tried to get her to apologize for saying she hated me. And mother-in-law told her husband she wanted to go. They left in an Uber and flew back to their state. Mother-in-law is ignoring us. Her husband sent us a text about how it is all our fault. And my sister-in-law called my husband up to berate him and said she will never come visit us because of how we treated our mother-in-law. If she hates OP so bad she's willing to sever her relationship with her son, then there's some missing reasons here. On that same note, if she can speak so lowly of OP in her own home, I wouldn't want her there either. OP intentionally eavesdropping is kind of crappy, but then again, it's OP home. The whole family sounds like they need to stay away from each other until they can all act like mature adults and have a conversation instead of instigating arguments and fights. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Type 1 error says, turning on the baby monitor when someone other than your spouse or yourself is with your child is being a responsible parent. Your mother-in-law and husband are the a-holes. They hate you for no good reason and they badmouthed you in your own home when they were guests. I've seen so many posts here when a spouse refuses to stand up to their parents. Your husband did the right thing standing up to them, not the a-hole. Sam Spade Pie says, you're not the a-hole for having the monitor on. Certainly this is appropriate whenever the baby is in the room. It actually seems a bit strange to me that you turned it off in the first place, but you should definitely not have told them that you overheard their conversation. At least any conversation other than an oops I just dropped the baby on its head sort of thing. Apparently this is your husband's doing, not yours though. Dart1126 says, you're the a-hole. You tuned in on the baby monitor for the sole purpose of eavesdropping. Not monitoring your baby unnecessarily without need or provocation. For now, until further info. Why does she hate you? You've given us no history. Also, why did you move far away? A couple things jumped out at me. My husband talked her into visiting, which I was not happy about. You won't even be gracious about your husband seeing his own mother after moving far away. This tells me that you are a part of this here, more than you've let us know. And also, you're a sore winner. Story 4. My wife and I just had our first baby. Recently I returned to work after my paternity leave ended. It's been rough not getting to see them every day anymore. So, to combat this feeling, I've been using our surveillance cameras to watch them through my phone. My wife knows about the cameras, but I haven't told her that I sometimes tune in to just see her and the baby. So, usually it's normal. At lunch I'd pull out my phone to get to see them for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, then give them their privacy. However, one day this week, I was watching and she had him out in the living room and had him down. He was crying pretty loudly and my wife was off camera in the kitchen. His crying went on for about 5 interrupted minutes and then I could hear my wife yell, shutting the duck up very loudly from the kitchen. I got very concerned. This isn't like her at all and I wanted to make sure she was okay. Unfortunately, my boss said I could not go home early to check on them, so I did the next best thing I could think of. I called up my mom and told her what had happened. She was as worried as I was, and I asked her to just go pop in and make sure everything is fine until I can get back home. So, she did, and I was met with a flurry of texts from my wife. She told me that mother showed up unannounced and that I had thought she needed to be watched. I told her that I didn't say that and I wanted to explain everything when I got home. When I did, she kicked mother out in front of me. I explained everything to her and she was livid. She said I was spying on her and that I didn't trust her to be a good mom. So I sent my mother here. I said that I did trust her, but she wasn't having it and she isn't talking to me. Am I in a hole? Mary 914 says, you're the a-hole. I get you're concerned, but honestly, postpartum is hard with the flurry of emotions. I always tell my new mom friends, babies can't fall off the floor if you need to walk away for a couple of minutes. And throw in colic, it's hard all around. You just showed your wife you don't trust her as a mother, and you value your mother to step in over trusting her. Should she have yelled? No, probably not. But the baby won't remember it. And as long as she's meeting the needs of the baby, it's normal for her to feel overwhelmed at times. Maybe instead of sending her mommy over unannounced, when you got home from work, you could have offered to watch your son so she could go have some alone time and decompress. 2020 on repeat says, as a mom who has had to do this very same thing, you're the a-hole. She needed a couple of minutes to recompose herself. A newborn baby screaming in your ears when you're exhausted and your entire world is flipped upside down and your hormones are going crazy. It's rough. You will never, ever understand how rough. I understand your intentions were in the right place, but what you did is 100% not okay. You did not trust your wife to know herself. You judged her as incapable. Then you brought in some unwanted help. I could go on, but I think your wife deserves to tell you all the ways she feels disrespected and violated. Get off Reddit, go apologize, and take every one of the lashings she gives you. Then learn from it and move on. Quack Like Me says, you're the a-hole, so instead of calling your wife, you called your mother to go babysit your wife. Nice move, pal. It's me, 38 male, my girlfriend Amber, 37 female, my daughter, 12 female, and my ex-wife Kara, 38 female. We got married young, and it wasn't a good marriage. Kara was traditionally attractive, and whenever we got married, she acted like she settled and never stopped anyone from suggesting she was better looking. When our daughter was little, she didn't stop going out because her friends were single. Every weekend I was at home watching our kid. During this time, I became friends with my daughter's teacher, Amber. She was previously divorced and became someone I confided with. She would constantly hype me up about myself. Then some of my friends see Kara flirting with guys at a bar. I asked her about it. She says I was being jealous and she'd just be happy that she chose me. That was the final straw and we divorced 7 years ago. After I divorced, me and Amber became close friends. Kara's convinced that Amber broke up our marriage, even though I've said countless times that she never once told me to do that. Amber and I didn't start dating until 4 years after my divorce. We just were good friends and then eventually everything clicked 4 years later, even multiple partners in between. So now to my ex-wife issues. So Amber and my daughter have formed a very close relationship. Amber was Aunt Amber for 3 years whenever my daughter was young. So lots of Christmas and birthday gifts she helped me with some of the girl dad things. I didn't know what to do now. We've been dating for 4 years. So she knows Amber for a total of 7 years. Amber's sister is getting married and has asked my daughter to be a bridesmaid. Part of being a bridesmaid is going to the bachelorette party, which is at a beach area about 5 hours from where we live. So I have no problem with her going with Amber. They've spent plenty of time alone. And the woman is a teacher. I have no concerns. My ex-wife is blowing up about it, saying she doesn't trust the situation and it's against the rules of our custody to allow her overnight without my supervision. I said that isn't true. And if she wants to make a big deal about it, then I'll go to the bachelorette party, rent a nearby hotel room, and say I'm in the vicinity in case of emergency. My wife's sister isn't that wild of a person. I don't see this becoming out of hand. The other issue my ex has is a tattoo that is going to be happening after the trip. My girlfriend wants a legacy tattoo, which is going to be a tree with her grandma's name, her mom's name, her sister's name, and then my daughter's name. It's like a family tattoo. We asked my daughter if she had any issues with it. She didn't, and absolutely loved the idea of it. My ex-wife is telling my parents about it now, saying she is uncomfortable and I don't care. I said personally it doesn't bother me and it's not harming anyone, so I plan to allow for both. My ex is now dragging my name through the mud to our mutual friends about it. Am I the yay-hole? Fizzbangwiz says, your ex does sound a bit unreasonable about a lot of things, but a 12-year-old child being invited to an overnight bachelorette party isn't one of them. What group of adults wants a child at a bachelorette party? What's their plan for the party? What are the activities planned? What will they be eating and drinking? Who all will be there? Does anyone know a child who will be present? It's perfectly reasonable for your ex to demand answers to those questions, and you should be doing the same for yourself before letting her attend. Bitter Conflict 4089 says, the tattoo is weird as hell. Your girlfriend is just a girlfriend. She isn't even a step-parent. Your daughter does not have a branch on her family tree. An overnight bachelorette party is not the place for a 12-year-old.